President Buhari felicitates with Christians at Easter, urges Nigerians to increase love for one another rather than hate.
Council of State meets on security and other critical national issues.
All the issues raised so that adequate security arrangement will continue to flow.
Senate approves revised 2022 fiscal framework with increased budget deficit.
The executive also requested for reduction in statutory transfers of some agencies totaling 6.07 billion.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss Good Friday, sacrificing for sustainable peace.
All right, so let's start this way with a question. What would you do if you were falsely accused of a crime? I guess the common sense reaction would be to defend yourself. And the first thing, of course, out of a number of actions would also be to hire a lawyer, not Kingsley. Now,
why do you say that?
No, not now, not now.
Why do you say that? I'm a quarter century at the bar and still going.
Well, okay. You may hire a lawyer such as Kingsley. But
no, if you are accused of an offense, your services, you are at liberty to hire a lawyer of your choice. And even if you do not wish to hire a lawyer, the state, which is the prosecutor, will give you a counsel from the number of state counsel that you have, usually the Ministry of Justice.
Yes, and it's usually pro bono, I guess.
Yes, it's pro bono in that instance.
Yes,
and even if you plead guilty to an offense, in some cases, a trial still goes on, but of course it's much faster.
Okay, so you now know what the common sense answer to my question is. But again, imagine this scenario, a man in his early 30s, completely innocent of a crime he was accused of. Now, rather than do what, again, many of us would ordinarily do, offered himself as a sacrifice for the good of others, including, of course, his enemies, and became the reason of mankind.
Well, Claire is certainly referring to Jesus Christ, who offered himself to be crucified on the cross of Calvary in Jerusalem. Now, Mahatma Gandhi, in one of his famous quotes, said, "It was a perfect act." The perfection lies in the fact that Jesus could have conjured all the powers at his disposal against his accusers, but he did not, because he was on a salvation mission for humanity.
Precisely. And Jesus Christ was accused of blasphemy and treason. His own people rejected him and demanded his death, while the high priests and scribes ordered his crucifixion. And ironically, perhaps the same crowd shouted Hosanna in the highest during his triumphant entry into Jerusalem, but vilified him at crucifixion. So Christians all over the world commemorate that act of sacrifice today as Good Friday. But Kingsley, I've always, wondered why such a terrible event, will be christened a good day.
Well, you always have clerics who will explain why today is now referred to as Good Friday. It was the day our Lord Jesus Christ was crucified after his, what would these days be referred to as a kangaroo trial. Now, what might not appear good on the surface, certainly the message therein is that Easter represents hope for a new beginning, because the sorrow of Friday, in a dramatic twist, metamorphosed to joy by Sunday with the resurrection of Jesus and his ultimate victory over death. So the good there conveys the triumph of Jesus Christ over death in fulfillment of the scriptures. Well, Claire, as Christians commemorate this day in history, our attention on today's program is how Christians can emulate the act of sacrifice on Good Friday rather than just a routine observance of the festival.
Indeed, Kingsley, I totally agree with you. And if you consider that this time 2 years ago, that in 2020, the world was under lockdown and Easter generally was observed indoors. But it would appear that people were compelled to make, a lot of sacrifices. Not it would appear, people were indeed compelled to make lots of sacrifices. Things were more relaxed last year and even better this year in terms of, the COVID-19 restrictions. But there is greater need now than ever before for Nigerians to make more sacrifices to uphold the peace and sanctity of our country. And of course, talking about the increase in insecurity and other crimes and criminality, and also other economic challenges here and there. So it's on this note I would like to welcome you to a very good Friday on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. I thank you for joining us.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program. Good Morning Nigeria is broadcast on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority from our Abuja headquarters studios. We're live every work day, that's Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Our complimentary segments, including business and newspaper review, will come up shortly. But now let's join Dennis Adegunloye for the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Claire. Good Friday morning to Nigerians out there. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari is felicitating with the Christian community in Nigeria on the occasion of Easter. The president says he joins Christian brothers and sisters to celebrate this year's Easter, which he describes as the most significant event in the Christian calendar. According to him, the message of Easter, which commemorates the resurrection of Jesus Christ after crucifixion and burial, should remind adherents of the power of divine love, faith, and redemption. President Buhari said Easter should therefore evoke in Nigerians the resilience of the human spirit, not to give up in the face of seemingly daunting challenges of life. The president is quoted as saying, "This period emboldens us to believe that the current state of uncertainty and insecurity will soon unfold a season of triumph of good over evil, hope over despair, and light over darkness. I urge us to increase our love for one another rather than hate, and show more patriotism, as this is the only country we have. I enjoin us, therefore, to live out the eternal words of Jesus Christ on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." Let us remember that the scriptural emphasis of love has so much relevance for us today as a nation more than ever before, and thus contribute towards its peace and development. As we approach another season of electioneering, let the security and unity of the nation guide our actions and utterances. End of quotes. The president wishes all those celebrating the Christian festival, and indeed all Nigerians, a joyful and blessed Easter. Meanwhile, President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, has felicitated with Nigerians, particularly the Christian faithful, as they join their brethren across the world in celebrating Easter, the season of the remembrance of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. In his message, Senator Lawan noted that the Easter marks the trial, sacrifice, victory, and completion of the divine mandate of the author of the Christian faith. He urges Nigerians to keep in mind the significance of the season, which he said is the perfect demonstration of sacrificial love to others. He assured Nigerians that the government will continue to work for the realization of the dreams of Nigerians of enduring national peace, unity, and progress, as the National Assembly will also continue to provide the necessary legislative interventions to support every effort made to take Nigeria out of current insecurity and economic challenges. President Muhammadu Buhari says his administration will continue to accord the nation's judiciary the desired support, respect, and independence to discharge its constitutional duties in the greater interest of the nation. The president stated this while hosting justices of the Supreme Court to the breaking of the Ramadan fast.
I found out that this country, we cannot do hop, step, and jump. We have to go through the pains of development. You have to wait for the justice in the end to take its course. I think this imposes so much discipline on whoever wants to lead.
If we can have those kind of leaders who do not interfere, particularly with judicial decisions, I think we can count ourselves as very lucky citizens.
A crucial meeting of the National Security Council is to be convened next week with a view to taking far-reaching and decisive measures against the resurgence of violent crimes in parts of the country towards achieving lasting peace, stability and public order. President Muhammadu Buhari is summoning the meeting following suggestions received from the Council of State, which met to discuss critical national issues. State House correspondent Adam Usamba reports that the meeting observed a moment of silence in honor of the late head of the interim national government, Chief Ernest Shonekan.
Where the situation is escalating is mentioned, where the situation is getting better was mentioned, and suggestion, like I've said, were proposed and solution discussed, and President promised to discuss this with the service chiefs on Tuesday, all the issues raised.
Ahead of the next conference on climate change scheduled for Egypt, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is advocating climate justice for Africa, noting that a just transition would mean more energy and must include ending global energy poverty. At a virtual event organized by the Atlantic Council on Climate Finance, the Vice President noted that Africa is already seeing the investments rules limit to the technologies choices for African countries in ways that do not apply to wealthy nations, and submits that climate justice must include far greater support for countries with the greatest needs and who contribute the least to global emissions. Osinbajo said every nation must have enough energy to build resilient infrastructure, deliver essential public services, and provide the cooling and air conditioning to withstand a warming planet. On Nigeria, the Vice President noted that the country remains committed to the net zero emissions by 2060, but would require the support and partnership of other stakeholders. The Vice President's voice was also loud on the use of alternative technologies, stressing that every country must find its own path to a low-carbon future. He expressed optimism that Africa will get it right at COP27, noting that Egypt will be a crucial moment for African leaders to explain their common position and for Western leaders to show they are hearing and living up to their commitments and responsibilities. The Climate Finance virtual event is one of the preludes to the COP27 event scheduled to hold in Egypt later in the year to further galvanize efforts towards a just transition. At the National Assembly, the Senate has passed the 2022 Appropriations Act Amendment Bill, which has increased the 2022 budget from 17.1 trillion naira to 17.3 trillion naira. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nkwo reports that 4 trillion naira was approved for petroleum subsidy for 2022.
However, the executive also requested for reduction in statutory transfers of some agencies totaling 6.07 billion.
Or laws that we can put together that can make the embassy spend money on their own, of course, is welcome. But I think that as it is now, the president had written that it should be repealed. But I can see that it's here.
The executive side, to ensure compliance with this act when it is signed by Mr. President.
And the House of Representatives has passed the bill amending the 2022 Appropriations Act with an approval of 4 trillion naira subsidy for petrol. The approval is sequel to a federal government request submitted to the House last week seeking adjustments to the 2022 fiscal framework.
The Appropriation Act 2022 in order to provide for premium motor spirit subsidy.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Against any? That's a bit.
That concludes the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues after this break with Kingsley and Claire. Have a good Friday day.
A new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively with Professor Umar Garba Dambata, Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC.
We have unveiled the 622 as a toll-free line through which consumers can be able to lodge their complaints. And we have introduced the 112 as the national emergency number.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
The ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer-long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger Bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
Buy Niger Registration and Telemarks in partnership with NTA Television Enterprises Limited. The Buy Niger project presents International Market Access Platform. BuyNiger.com, a one-stop e-commerce portal and public procurement referral for exclusively made in Nigeria products and services. The Telemarks for buying and selling on television for company and product registration, participation, sponsorship, and adverts on Telemark. Call Acho on 080-9521-2547 or Sarah on 080-331-73233. Visit www.buyniger.com or www.ntatve.com.ng. For product inspection, standards and quality assurance, Buy Niger Center, The Arena, NTA Headquarters, Abuja, FCT. Buy Niger, Market Square, Mount View Mall, Life Camp, Abuja. Buy Niger, providing market access for entrepreneurs in the 36 states and the FCT, from local to global.
We don't carry our pikin go hospital.
I don't see why we carry pikin go hospital because of ordinary fever now.
Ordinary fever? Pikin wey im body dey hot like that.
Now cloth now soak inside water, take rub her body. She don't dey play even as I come out.
If na malaria na im dey worry that pikin, by now you no know say the thing for don worse pass.
Yeah! Waiting. No be my generator dey be that one. Abeg make I quick call mechanic.
Carry cloth and water.
Yes. For generator?
You use cloth and water clean our pikin body. Go use that same pattern for the generator. Make we see as e go work.
Sense, mama.
Really?
I receive sense. So, see, I go do am correct now. Make you carry this phone and help me call the engineer. Make I carry her pikin sharp the hospital.
Receive sense, do am correct.
If fever catch you and you no go treat am sharp sharp, if it's serious pass as e dey o, especially for pikin dem whenever reach 5 years.
Do test. If na malaria, finish your medicine. If no be malaria, your health worker go tell you wetin to do.
Na Federal Ministry of Health and American people dem bring una this message.
This Ramadan, start your day with the goodness of pig to help you stay nourished through the day. Encourage acts of kindness, big or small, and share love and nourishment with everyone around you. Stay nourished from Sahur to Iftar. Ramadan Kareem.
Peak. Reach for your peak. Don't just wake up your child. Wake up the champion in them. Give them energy to help them win every day with Milo at breakfast. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child.
All All right, you on to Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for business news, and we join our correspondent, Alika Akpanachi Arwa, with stories from the stock exchange.
The launch of NGX ETD market saw the listings of two equity index futures contracts, NGX 30 index futures, NGX pension index futures, with more securities to be added in the future. To promote clearing efficiency, stability, and confidence, the exchange has collaborated with Premier Central Counterparty (CCP) in Nigeria and NG Clearing Limited to provide the clearing infrastructure for NGX derivatives market and its clearing members, Access Bank and Zenith Bank. The ETDS market will commence with trading activities by the first three trading license holders, Cardinal Stone Securities Limited, Meristem Security Limited. Commenting on the launch, the Chief Executive Officer, Temi Popula, commended the efforts of stakeholders who have successfully driven the completion of the derivatives market since 2014. He said NGX remains committed to building an exchange that can cater to the increasing sophisticated needs of domestic and foreign investors, a strong pillar to enhance liquidity and expand capital market capitalization. NGX ETDS market will complement existing asset classes, provide investors and other market players with the necessary tools for tactical asset allocation, as well as improve risk and cost management for effective portfolio management. It will further enhance the participation of domestic and international investors in Nigeria's financial markets, which will positively impact the performance of the economy. In taking a look at Wednesday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Opanachi Arwa.
Alika Opanachi with the business package, and up next is newspaper review.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atebe, is right here with us. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Bayo.
Nigeria.
Good to have you on a Good Friday.
Yes.
Okay, we have two papers. Let me begin with the blueprint. The blueprint below the nameplate, National Assembly passes 17.319 trillion naira revised 2022 budget. OK's 4 trillion naira petrol subsidy adjourns plenary till April 26th. OK's 4 trillion naira petrol subsidy adjourns plenary till April 26th. Now, the list story has a double-decker headline: 4 years into jail terms, Council of State pardons Dariye and Nyame. General Larewaju, Akiode, 155 others too, rejects ex-bank PHB MD Atuche and 2 other requests. Requests turned down to discourage fraud. And 434 nominations approved for national honors. That's according to Akumen. 16 years after, federal government to conduct national and housing census April 2023. And NPC, that's the Population Commission, set for pilot exercise June 2022. You can see there at the meeting of the Council of State, President Buhari handshake with former military head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, and in the background, former military head of state, General Absalam, And also there in the background, former President Goodluck Jonathan. Buhari, Lawan, and Bala preach love and peace at Easter. COVID-19 cases and deaths dropped to lowest levels in Africa. That's according to WHO. 11,536 Nigerian schools shut since 2020 over insecurity. That's according to UNICEF. Imo, INEC suspends CVR in Ihito Boma over attack on officials. Naira hits $590 to $1 at parallel market ahead of Easter break. Lagos Ibadan, Itakpe Warri rail e-ticketing will generate 140 billion naira. 2023 ADC to organize debate for Mogalu, Kachiku, Moye, and others. Claire.
Yes, Kinsley, thank you. I have just the paper, and it's the Al Jazeera Friday. Also carrying almost all the stories that you have read. But the lead story is, of course, on the deficit that comes from the revised budget, which the paper puts at 4 trillion naira to be spent on subsidy. There are also other stories. Council of State pardons 159 inmates, confirms 434 merit awards. It's also trending just a little below the nameplate. And among those that have walked to freedom, the Al Jazeera newspaper is saying on my right-hand column, which is to your left, jubilation as former governor of Plateau, Dariye walks to freedom. And there's also an astronomical prediction that in 2030, Muslims will be observing the Ramadan fast twice in that year, first in January and then a second time later in December. We hear that happened, the last time it happened was sometime in 1997, thereabouts, according to this paper. That's what it says. There's also picture stories on the front page, but to the left-hand column, you will find a story on the NRC losing ticket right over racketeering, and it says federal government has picked a firm for sales. So these are the stories trending on the front page of the Al Jazeera Friday. Bayo.
Thank you, Claire. Let's start with the story you read about the Council of State. President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday presided over the National Council of State, and the council paid a minute silence in respect of late Chief Ene Shoneka, the head of the defunct interim national government. 3 former heads of states, General Yakubu Gowon, General Salami Abubakar, and former President Goodluck Jonathan attended, while former President Olusegun Obasanjo joined virtually from United States. State governors also joined with some members of the Federal Executive Council. Highlights of the meeting included the pardon that you reported now for 2 former governors who are serving jail term. Jolly Nyame, who was in his 6th year, and Joshua Dariye, who was in the 4th year of his sentencing. Highlights were 434 Nigerians who are now to be granted national honors. The census date has been confirmed by the National Council of State to be April 2023. And also in exercising his responsibility of prerogative of mercy, the council okayed the pardon for the 2 former governors. However, it declined the proposal to pardon a former chief executive for a bank and 2 others on the grounds that it will serve as a bad precedent. There has been spate of reports of concern around the country. An official of the Independent National Electoral Commission has been murdered where he was carrying out continuous voter registration in Imo State. 2 other officials of INEC are also missing. They are unaccounted for. The recent electoral commissioner for Imo State, Professor Emeka Ezewonwu, stated this and said it happened at Amwokia Ward in Ihite Uboma local government area of Imo State. The continuous voter registration exercise has now been suspended. INEC has condoled the family of the deceased, the murdered officer identified as Mr. Nwokore Anthony. INEC has suspended the CVR and has enjoined the security operatives to endeavor to trace those who behind this, unravel them and bring them to justice.
It was a terrible video, clips that went viral yesterday, and people kept on circulating it. It was very, very disturbing. And again, the state of insecurity in parts of the country, and you are holding that kind of exercise, and you leave, the venue porous, without protection, without security. That also should be a cause for concern. And that area, it's called Ihite Obama. Ihite Obama. So it's I don't know. I really don't know what to say. It was, people were exposed. There was no protection.
Well, that is in Imo. And in Bayelsa, hoodlums suspected to be political thugs invaded the Bayelsa State High Court to disrupt a court proceedings. The political thugs, numbering about 30, disrupted the process and started stoning the judge. In fact, the judge had to be rushed out of the court by the police orderly. And this was in the case of a suit seeking redress over some contest, the disputed congress of political party that happened last year. And so far, the police are vigilant. They have been able to arrest 2 persons. Talking about the train abductees of March 28, families of the abductees gathered at the National Human Rights Commission office yesterday and made some passionate pleas. They spoke at a briefing at the Human Rights Commission. They pointed out that one of the abductees is a 7-month pregnant woman who was due for cesarean section and is still being held. Another is an 85-year-old woman who is diabetic and is among the council. They expressed concerns and willingness to be particularly active with government, particularly in activities relating to the release of their loved ones. The Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission was represented. Mr. Anthony Juku was represented by an officer of the Human Rights Commission, and he gave assurance that all their pleas will be given the prompt attention it deserves. Well, it's Easter, and President Muhammadu Buhari has sent Easter message, observing that this year Easter is very unique in the sense that it's for the adherents of 2 critical faiths in Nigeria. It culminates the 40-day season of Lent for Christians and also Muslims faithful who are currently halfway in the holy month of Ramadan. It says, for us as a nation, Easter marks the commemoration of the resurrection and should remind us all of the power of divine love, faith, and redemption. It also invokes the resilience of human spirit not to give up when we are faced with daunting challenges. The President expressed hope that the period should embolden us to believe that the current speed of uncertainties and insecurity will eventually end. A season of triumph will come to pass for good over evil. He expressed the belief that a blessed Easter is what we will have, and he enjoys all Nigerians to live out the eternal words of Father, forgive them, for they knew not what they have done. He enjoys all to remember that scriptural emphasis of love, which has so much relevance for us today as a nation to contribute towards peace and development.
Yes, sir. No question? All right, Ayo. I guess that will be it for our newspaper review for today.
I am home and dry, no yellow card.
No yellow card, but if exhausted by 2 minutes, it's permissible. But Monday, I'll be here.
Okay.
All right, have a good weekend. All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria. Don't go away. A conversation on Good Friday, sacrificing for Easter. We'll be right back.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, Remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels. Leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news, or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency. A new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively with Professor Umar Garba Dambata, Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC.
We have unveiled the 622 as a toll-free line through which consumers can be able to lodge their complaints. And we have introduced the 112 as a national emergency number.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Don't just wake up your child. Wake up the champion in them. Give them energy to help them win every day with Milo at breakfast. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child. Milo! The ever-busy ancient city of Onitsha is a commercial hub with millions of commuters seamlessly linking other states daily for business, leisure, and other purposes. To upscale its road network, the construction of a 1.6-kilometer-long second Niger bridge, including a 10.3-kilometer highway furnished with other infrastructure, has been in motion by the federal government. This project will ease congestion on the existing 56-year-old Onitsha bridge and boost the economic capacity of the state as it easily connects to other parts of the country. The completion of the world-class second Niger bridge Onitsha will be one of the many proud moments of the state, its people, Nigerians, and foreign investors. Onitsha, which hosts the largest market in Africa, is geared up to boast of an impressive road network. Once again, these moments are made alive by the federal government, and it is deserving of all the applause.
Dialogue, empathy, love and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Don't just wake up your child. Wake up the champion in them. Give them energy to help them win every day with Milo at breakfast. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child. Milo!
Now, as a prompt for our conversation on Good Friday, sacrificing for sustainable peace, let's listen to this backgrounder by our correspondent, Ekene Undulwe.
Good Friday, the Friday before Easter, is a symbolic date in the Christian calendar.
It is a day Christians all over the world commemorate the crucifixion of Jesus Christ in the mood of sorrow, penance, and fasting. As captured in the Bible, Good Friday is the story of how Jesus Christ, the Son of God, was flogged and ordered to carry the cross on which he was crucified. So why then is it called Good Friday, when it is a dark and bleak event commemorating a day of suffering and death for Jesus Christ? The answer could be found in the fact that Christians all over the world believe that the day led to the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, which is the very pinnacle and glory of the Christian faith. The day is usually commemorated with church services and reenactments of the Passion of Christ, depicting his ultimate sacrifice to save mankind from sin. As Christians in Nigeria and elsewhere mark Good Friday today, the world is struck by large-scale deprivation, devastation, and suffering that assail many across the globe. Christians seem nowhere nearer a world of peace and harmony for which the events of Good Friday promised. What lesson is there to be drawn from the sacrifice of Christ on the cross? How can Nigerians apply this lesson in sacrificing for sustainable peace in the society? These and more will be the focus of discussions on this episode of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Ekene, and hello. If you're just joining us, it's Good Friday here on Good Morning Nigeria on the network service, and we're focusing on sacrificing for sustainable peace and development. Let me introduce our guest for this discussion on Good Friday. We have Reverend Dr. Udoche Majesty Odikanwa, who's a senior pastor and general overseer, the Restoration Life Assembly International, we here in Abuja.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Also with us here in the studio is Dr. Philip Uyab. He's a teacher, peace advocate, and conflict analyst. We thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Morning.
All right, gentlemen, let's begin the conversation with you both. But first, the entire concept of Good Friday and the linkage to Easter, which is on Sunday, Easter Sunday, and resurrection of Jesus Christ in the context of our contemporary living. So what does Good Friday mean, and how should we approach it for those who have the Christian faith? Let's begin first with the Reverend Odikanwa.
Thank you so much. Jesus Christ, as I always tell people, chose to die. Death didn't just come to him coincidentally, but he chose to die that we might live. In history recorded that 3rd April, AD 33, Jesus died. He was crucified. And he didn't just die, he died a very shameful one, that he might take away our shame. And also going down the theophilosophical memory of Good Friday. It is called good because Jesus Christ has finished the case of our being condemned as human beings. What the first Adam didn't do, the second Adam did, and he is the second Adam. Because if you take it down to the Bible, God told Adam, the day you eat of this fruit, you shall die. And so God can never jettison his word. His word stands forever. And when he now saw that man was meant to die, to be doomed eternally, he brought out an escape route. And that escape route was Jesus, his only begotten son. I'm going to where it's called good right now. And so when Jesus was born, today could have been called good if he didn't accept to die. And so he died the very shameful one. At Golgotha, I've gone to Israel physically, we have seen where Jesus was crucified then, and it was near a market square. And at that time, people were passing and we are wagging their heads and saying, look at the person that is the king of the Jews. He was deceiving people and all that. He took those shames because he wanted to navigate us out from eternal condemnation. And so, Jesus Christ and Christianity couldn't have been possible if his death didn't take place. And so that was why it was called good. It was possible that anybody could be born, but in the long run, you disappoint either your family, your nation, or your generation. But Jesus did not do that. As I said before, he chose to die. And today we are calling it good because his death brought our life. His death brought our salvation. His death brought reconciliation. And his death also brought sacrifice, what the Hebrew word called korban. The word korban, not to ban, korban, K-O-R, then ban, it has to do with drawing nearer. And so the sacrifice he paid by dying, in Hebrew called korban, drew us closer to God, because before we were very far from God, very far from each other because of enmity and all that. But he drew us closer, by dying the death on the cross. And today we are saying it is good because Jesus has paid the ultimate price for all of us.
Dr. Hayab?
Yes. Okay, coming from peace building perspective, since I'm not a pastor, yes, the Good Friday celebration also identifies or describes the question of forgiveness. Well, I happen to be a Christian and I've read the Bible. The story tells that when Jesus was at the point of death, he actually said to his Father, forgive them for they do not know what they are doing. In human capacity, it's very difficult to forgive someone who has actually hurt you, who has condemned you to death, and at that point in time had crucified you. But this forgiveness is that which points to our walk, that we cannot continue to do one eye for an eye. An eye for an eye will make everybody in the village blind. It is high time we started the discourse of forgiveness, understanding that we have to forgive. We even have to forgive ourselves at times for us to be able to make headway in our lives. So I would say that the lessons to learn from Good Friday for me in terms of peace building is the concept of realizing our humanity, that yes, we have the capacity to wrong or to be wronged, but then also we have the capacity to forgive. Until we learn to forgive, we will not be able to make the world a better place to live.
Okay, Dr. Hayab, I was also still with you. You're not a pastor, so I won't ask you things of theology.
Yes,
so let me. Okay, but you have read the Bible, as yes. You said, so it's not strange to you entirely.
No, not at all.
So is there, Nigeria today is hurting. We're hurting from so many things, insecurity, economic issues, personal domestic issues, so many things. Is there any symbolic analogy that we can draw from, the society that Jesus Christ lived in, that we can apply to our society today, that could or may give hope to Nigerians?
Yes, Christ didn't live in a perfect society. He lived in a normal society. If he had lived in a perfect society, the chances would have been that he would not even have been condemned, because the Bible story tells that there was a thief by the name Barabbas who was standing in court against Christ, and then the judge was asking if I should really talk about clemency, like what the federal government just did yesterday, recently, pardoning some people who have been condemned. So he was asking whether to release Barabbas or Christ. As far as the people were concerned, it was Christ who has offended them. And they asked that he be the one to be condemned, inasmuch as there was already enough evidence against Barabbas, who has actually been described as a robber. So yes, that was not a perfect society. However, Jesus' step towards accepting the condemnation, going to the cross, dying on behalf of the people so that they might live, shows that we can have people, and we should be the people who can make the sacrifice, standing in the gap for our nation to survive. If all of us will become bigots, if all of us will become unforgiving, then we will not have a nation to to give to our children, and that will be unfortunate.
All right, thank you. Again, we come back to Dr. Udochi Majesty. The core of what we're celebrating today, or what we're commemorating today, and the reason why we are calling out for people to emulate the sacrificial nature of today is because certain things happen. Jesus Christ predicted that certain things would happen on the third day after his death, and it came to pass, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the resurrection.
Yes. It came to pass, and that shows that he is not just the Son of God, he's the prophet of God. And so he predicted that this will happen, and it came to pass. And as a leader, that if you try to dissect what you just said right now, you're talking about leaders having vision, aside from the spiritual angle. You need to have vision when you are leading a particular set of people, even in a micro and macro, way of leadership. We talk about micro, you talk about the settings from your family settings, and from the little responsibilities you have been given in the office and all that. And the larger society, that's macro now. You are talking about vision. And Jesus had vision. He predicted that he's going to rise up again at the third day. And as I said before, he didn't just die. They didn't just kill him. Jesus did not die prematurely. That was the mission he came for. And for the fact that he stooped low to fulfill that mission also gives us a kind of a light that we must be very focused to try to fulfill any mission we are given to do, no matter where it is given from. And so his prediction of rising up the third day means that there is hope for all of us. You may be down as a nation, you may be down as an individual, you may be down as an organization, but certainly you are not out. There are still going to be hope for you. And so today is a very golden day in the Christendom, and also Easter is a very golden, in fact, most people celebrate Easter more than Christmas. And somebody will tell you it is behoving on any human being to be born on earth. The one thing is to fulfill why you were born on earth. And so Jesus Christ had the right to be born. Let me put it that way. But for the fact he chose to die, gave Christianity a very strong foundation. And his prediction that he will rise up the third day, meaning that he has authority over hell, authority over sin, and he conquered death. And today he is alive forevermore, not just in heaven, he lives in us right now. In the Old Testament, the Ark of Covenant, you talk about the Ark, you see God carried in the Ark. Obed-Edom brought the Ark inside and he prospered. Now in the New Testament, he lives within us. After his death right now, he lives in us. You don't carry the Ark anymore. That's the Old Testament, showing you that you can. And in that time, wherever the Ark enters, you see prosperity, you see jubilation, because the Ark houses God. Houses God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. But right now in the New Testament, you don't do that anymore. He's now within us. We carry him all over. We are the Ark and the temple of God. And so his prediction of rising up the third day has come to pass. And that shows you that heaven and earth will pass away, but the word of God stands forever.
All right. Thank you very much, the Reverend Dr. Odekanwa. We have another guest who is joining the conversation at this time. His Reverend Father Silvanus Ahmed. It's of the Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja. Father Silvanus, pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, well, let's have your own take on the essence of Good Friday. There is a clear trajectory to the occurrence of Good Friday. What does that trajectory teach us?
The whole Good Friday event is one that is very significant in Christendom because it marks for us the beginning of one of the major events, or rather it is one of the major events in human history and a defining moment for those who believe in God. It is a starting point of the culmination of the mission of Jesus, which brought about salvation for humanity. So Jesus dying on Good Friday, as he said himself, is an act of free will. I lay down my life for my sheep. And then he made it very clear that no one is taking this from him, his life. He's giving it up freely. And that's why his death is important. And this sets the tone for us as Christians in our dealings with other people. While Jesus was washing the feet of his disciples, John chapter 13, he said to them, I am giving you an example that you should follow. And then his dying on the cross becomes also a very major example for us to follow. And that's the example of sacrificial living, sacrificial giving. The death of Jesus is vicarious, meaning that he didn't die for his own sake. He died for our sakes. And if Jesus died for our sakes, it is a call on us as Christians to also be willing to give up something, to die in a sense for the sake of others. This death of Jesus brought about a change in human history. If we also are ready and willing to make sacrificial giving and living, then we bring about positive changes too in the life of other people and of society.
Two things that Dr. Odekanwa, said about the whole act of, Jesus dying and, resurrecting, that we overlook, or we have overlooked, or we rarely talk about, and that's the fact that he chose to die.
Yeah.
It was a deliberate, choice he made. He was not compelled. He was not forced. He was not bribed. He took that decision. And the second thing is that he died a shameful death, regardless of, who he is. His death was shameful. Now, how do these, two things reflect in the life of a Christian?
Truly, Jesus was not compelled to die. He died of his own free choice. As I said earlier, he himself said he laid down his life of his own free will. John chapter 3 verse 16 and verse 17. Scripture says that God sent him into the world because he loves us, so that he will die for us, and that those who believe in him will not perish but have eternal life. And verse 17 says that Jesus came not to condemn the world, but that by his death humanity may be saved. So the death of Jesus was a free act of God. It was not something that was forced. God was not under any compulsion to send his son to die for us, but God chose to do that freely. And even when Jesus came to, like I said, I lay down my life of my own, on my own. No one takes it up from me. I lay it down of my own accord. That tells us clearly that Jesus was not compelled to die. That was the very reason why he came. Philippians chapter 2 from verse 6 to verse 11 talks about Jesus being equal with God, but humbling himself and coming down to the earth to live like us, be like us in all things, and eventually he died in that state of humility. He died a very ignominious death on the cross. So the death of Jesus was not forced at all. To the Jews who handed him over to Pilate, he was a heretic. To Pilate and the Roman government at the time, he was a political liability. But as St. Paul says, for us who are Christians, he is the power of God by whom we get salvation.
Yes, but how do those, the fact that he chose to die,
yes,
knowing the implication, and that even his death was a shameful one. You know, again, in spite of, you know, his divinity. How do these things reflect in our lives, you know, as Christians? How do we take those, you know, steps?
Charity must not be compelled. Charity has to be a free act. That's where the lesson comes in for us. Jesus gave his life for us out of love. He was not compelled. If we are forced to do something, then it is no longer our free choice. And that's why even in the eyes of the law, someone who is forced to do something that the law ordinarily considers a crime is not held liable, because it is not your free action. So, if we see in the death of Jesus a free act, then we should also learn to do things for people freely, even if it will cost us some pain, some discomfort, some loss. That is where we can talk about charity. That is where we can talk about true love, knowing fully well that this thing we are doing, there are some downsides to it, but we still do it because we know that at the end of it, something good will come out of it, even if not for us, for somebody else. That's where the big lesson is. And then as for the death of Jesus being a shameful death, true, that's very true. Crucifixion was the worst form of execution for the Romans. If you hear that the Romans beheaded somebody, that's a glorious death as far as they are concerned. But crucifixion is a death that is given to a criminal. So Jesus humbled himself to that lowest level to also teach us a lesson in humility. Sometimes we have to go so low and do things that ordinarily we would not want to do, provided that by it we bring about a good for someone or for society. These are the big lessons we need to take from these two points in the life of Jesus, in the experience of Jesus' death.
All right. Thank you very much, Father Silvanus. We'll come back to it in the course of the conversation. Back again to Dr. Philip Hayab. Against the backdrop of what Jesus Christ went through and the significance of his sacrifice, how do you reconcile that with the state of the world today?
Yes, this is where there's a huge problem. I think the world has become so vengeful, and this vengeance is what is escalating into conflicts and very violent conflicts leading to the loss of lives and property. We can see what is happening in Ukraine versus Russia. It's just a question of quest for power and control. And then instead of talking, negotiating, finding a common ground, now lots of lives are being destroyed. And the funniest thing would be that at the end of all this destruction, there will still be people coming back to the table to discuss, meaning that we lack what I would call the spirit of selflessness. We are becoming very personal, we are becoming very self-centered. But Jesus, like what the priest here have actually talked about, died for someone. He died for us, not for himself. And so in most cases, we should not be talking about it's my right, it's my right. If everybody was going to claim their rights, then we will land ourselves into a big problem. This is what is happening in our country today with the level of insecurity that we face. If you listen to any interview with the bandits, they claim that they have not been treated justly, and either their parents were not treated justly or some other persons. But the challenge is that the people that have been kidnapped and made to pay ransom, were they the ones who ill-treated these bandits? The answer is simply no. So in trying to make a case, you end up hurting someone, and we are not making the world a safe place to live. So we need to get back to this understanding that if we want to take the pound of flesh all the time, we will end up making everybody move around with move around in a pool of blood.
Okay. You want to have another question? I have another question for Dr. Dikawa, if you don't have. Okay, Dr. Dikawa, I want us to again to look at, some of the key issues in Easter celebration, and that's the fact that when you're a Christian, you're believed to be born again, which means that you are a new creature. That's what the Bible tells us. It means that you have a new way of thinking. But if you look at what is happening and the way we do things, we find it difficult to reconcile that aspect of our Christian life with what we really practice.
Very pathetic. And that was the cardinal reason why Jesus came. Philippians chapter 2 verse 5. He said, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. And also 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse number 17. If anyone be in Christ, is a new creation. All things are jettisoned, and all things are become new. And also Galatians chapter 5 verse 22, you see the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Love, peace, and all that. There are so many people that see Christianity as a religion. But I tell people Christianity is not a religion. You don't classify Christianity with other religions. You classify Christianity is a relationship, is a bond between God and man. And when you talk about a bond, a relationship, we are talking about a transfer of traits. I'm a psychologist, and we talk about human traits. That is TRAITX. You talk about traits, the aura you carry. When you enter into a place, something should come into their subconsciousness about you. When they hear your name, your voice, something should come in their mind about your personality. That's what we talk about traits. And when you are a born-again Christian, you must have the traits of Christ. And that is love, that is peace, that is sacrifice. As I said, in Hebrew it's called Koban. That has to do with drawing nearer. You say you love someone, you must be able to sacrifice. And sacrifice, in the analytical sense of it, has to do with jettisoning what is your right, most times, for someone to get a betterment. You want to say sacrifice, you are not sacrificing anything, you are not jettisoning anything. Your ego must be massaged, your ego must come down if you want to sacrifice and live like Christ. So what I'm saying is that so many people see Christianity as a religion. I'm a Christian. So that's why you are not seeing most times the reflex of the life of Christ in them. Some people, even at the pulpit, we preach and they will go to the beer parlor in the night. Do you understand? They don't live the life of this Jesus Christ. Most of them are there for merchandise. Some of them, as I've told you, they do it because I am a Christian. And so I don't want to be the person of the other religion. And so I grew up, I saw my mother, I saw my father praying and all that. So I have to just pray. I'm going to church because my neighbor invited me to that church. So I have to follow the person to the church. And so that's why I'm going to church. But the marriage between themselves and this person, this God that has died for us, is not there. There is no correlation between their own life and the life of Christ, because they have seen Christianity as a religion. And so when you are born again, just like you rightly said, your morality must be born again. Your dressing code must be born again. Your conversation must be born again. Your intra and interpersonal relationship with others must be born again. Your perceptive analysis and judgment must be born again. Doctor talked about the bandits. Now, some of these people, there are so many people that ginger them. But our prayer in this nation is that very soon the Lord will rain his judgment on all the people that have decided to make this place a very uncomfortable place for people. These are people, through their egos, have not allowed anything to be jettisoned. They want to hold on to, some of them, to whatever they are holding on to. And so you propel people to do what they do because you don't want to forgive or lay sacrifice. As you rightly say, Jesus Christ left his throne. He left everything about him. He chose to die. And so we should begin to have a reflect that this Jesus Christ I'm celebrating are all his traits in me. Because if you celebrate someone and you don't have the resemblance of that person, you are just celebrating in vague. You don't know what you're doing. You are just a ruse. And so what we are saying is that Christianity is all about Easter. Easter is all about behavioral change. Behavioral change is all about Christianity. And Christianity is circled in the lifestyle of Jesus Christ.
All right. Thank you very much. Reverend Father Silvanus, back to you on the concept of sacrifice. To whom is that preachment intended when you say sacrifice? When you look at what Jesus Christ went through, Jesus Christ was not accused, tried and condemned by the commoners or the followers, even though you might say that in the end the commoners were saying crucify him, crucify him. But Jesus went through all of that experience, accusation, trial, condemnation, and then crucifixion. And arising from that, and his entire life, short as it was, is the concept of sacrifice, of humility, and others. But so when we today are talking about sacrifice, from whom do we expect a sacrifice?
The sacrifice is expected from everybody. Everybody. It is not expected of some persons and then some others have no business with it. We must all be ready to make sacrifices one for another. Otherwise, we will have conflicts. Because at every point, there is something that we can do or give or let go of that someone else needs, even though at the same time we may be in need of that same thing. But someone else is in greater need of it. So at every time, somebody has to be making a sacrifice for the good of the others, for the good of community. It will not be something that is happening every day, every time. But one time or the other, it will be expected of us to sacrifice something for someone. So the simple answer to your question is the sacrifice is expected of everybody. There is something we can always give, and at some times it will be demanded of us by moral obligation to let go of something or to actively do something that will not be very pleasant to us, but will be beneficial to someone or a group of people.
How challenging is it to make a sacrifice?
It is never easy, that's the truth. Because as I said earlier, we cannot talk about sacrificing without letting go of something that will discomfort us or doing something that will discomfort us. And that's where the true test of a sacrifice comes. If it is something we are compelled to do, we are not doing it freely, so it is not a sacrifice. If it is not costing us anything, it is not a sacrifice. We have to be doing something before we can say it is a sacrifice. It is actually costing us something. That's why Mother Teresa would say that we should give and love until it hurts. If it is not hurting, then it is not yet a sacrifice.
Okay, I like that last addition, if it's not hurting, because sometimes, again, people understand, the context of sacrifice, like Kinsley said. We have different interpretations of what it means. Some will say it's simply, forbearance, some forfeiture, some just letting go or whatever. But if it's not hurting, it's not sacrifice. But Dr. Hayab, let us now situate sacrifice within the different contexts of issues that we're dealing with. And again, one of the biggest issues is insecurity. A lot of people have died. They have paid the supreme price, the supreme sacrifice. Now, for the living, both parties, the bandits or the terrorists or the secessionists and the other party, what kind of sacrifice do we expect, even as Christians?
Now, this is very important, looking at the past of nations that have had the similar situation. Maybe not banditry per se, but if we take the case of South Africa as a nation, for so many years, South Africans were first in the hands of the Dutch. After a long while, from 1600s to the early 1900s, the British took over from the Dutch. After a while again, then they were back in the hands of the Dutch, and then there was this whole issue of apartheid. It was not easy. Anybody who has studied the history of South Africa will know that people lived very terrible lives. But there came a time where there was a need for sacrifice. The likes of Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, and others, Mbeki's father actually, Mbeki, had to make sacrifices to say, look, we have to let go of the past. We cannot continue to live that, okay, because I was incarcerated for 27 years, everybody must go to prison for 27 years. In this case, there is no victim, there is no winner, which is also the kind of negotiations Nigeria had at the end of the Civil War. Now, when you want to be the winner, which is where we have come today, let's say, okay, because we were not treated fairly. Most of the interviews that I've listened from the bandits, they say the government knows what we're asking for instance. And then, for instance, in around Sokoto, Katsina, KB, where you have Turji, the major warlord, he's saying that because his father was humiliated for several years, he was going to court for an offense that he didn't commit. Now, if it is 7 years, for how long has this area been in insecurity? You just need to travel from, I dared that experience in 2020. I was going to Sokoto and I traveled via Katsina. I drove for over 40 kilometers. There was no single car moving on one of the best roads in Nigeria, from Jibia to Kauranamoda. Now, communities have been sacked, people have died, soldiers have died, civilians have died, including the bandits. Now, if we continue to live in he's seeking for justice in this case, that is what it seems. But how is that the best way to seek for justice? The answer will be no. So I would say that the likes of Turji and the warlords should sacrifice and allow the past to remain in the past. By forgiving and letting the past go does not mean that you forget. Nobody forgets. In fact, it is said that people who forget hardly even forgive. But we have to understand that the humanity of the other person has to be respected. If he feels cheated, and then that is why he has raised an army of bandits to terrorize people. These people that have been terrorized, don't they feel cheated? If they too will now in the future, let's say their own offspring, will come back to take a pound of flesh of what their fathers or maybe relatives went through, then we will never have a place called Nigeria. So it is a huge sacrifice. I would say that the bandits should withdraw, go back to wherever they were, to the businesses they were doing initially before they started this. And we who have been hurt now, since we are still here, we have to also forgive them for the wrong that they have done, and then begin to come together to build a common future. We've seen forgiveness that has worked in Rwanda. Many people who have traveled there will tell you that Rwanda is like a template now for post-conflict situations in Africa, and indeed in the world. People have had to, let's say, allow this issue of identity that had been the crisis that started the crisis to let go, to say, look, now we are Rwandese. It's the same thing in South Africa. We are South Africans, not we are black, not that we are white. You know, people whose lands were taken had to allow this matter to rest, or else by now, maybe since this African majority leadership in South Africa, I think they would have been in court every day, everybody trying to claim something. So yes, this is actually affirming what the priests have said here, the pastors have said, they talked about sacrifice has to come with a pain. And then if we're going to end the insecurity in Nigeria, all of us who have been pained, including the bandits themselves who are claiming that they've not been treated wrongly, including those of us who can no longer go to Kaduna now even when we want to, we have to understand and recognize the humanity of every other person and then forgive. Now when we forgive them, we start a new course of journey. And the new course of journey is to build a Nigeria where everybody is free, where everybody is secured and can travel and do their businesses.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Philip Hayab. Just to again come back to the concept of sacrifice for sustainable peace, we of course should acknowledge that members of the armed forces and security agencies are indeed paying the supreme price for sustainable peace in the country. In almost all parts of the country, they have been deployed to tackle insecurity. And from time to time, we do get reports of fatalities from amongst them, which is the highest price anyone could pay for peace. They are willing and ready to lay down their lives. But the message, of course, is to the generality of the populace. I want to go back to Father Silvanus. Father Silvanus, well, we do know that Jesus paid the supreme price for our salvation. And when today, therefore, we are calling on humanity to make sacrifice, the idea, of course, is not mass death. That's to say, let everybody die, and then we'll have sustainable. If everybody dies, then there will be nothing else left on earth. So, what are the ingredients that we can pick out in terms of sacrifice today and relate it to sustainable peace and indeed overall growth and development of humanity?
First, we would have to do less of me, I, and more of the other. In other words, we have to embrace more of selflessness and expunge selfishness. That's the basis, the foundation upon which we can talk about any sacrificial act. If we are focused on ourselves, then whatever happens to the other person is not our business. Even if we have in our hands the solution to a situation, as long as it does not bother us, we will not care, even if the rest of society is burning. So first, we must think about others, and then before ourselves. That doesn't mean that ourselves will not be considered important. We love our neighbors as we love ourselves. But the point here is that we must be willing to look at the common good. We must be ready to look at what is happening to the others and how we can contribute to their betterment. One of the biggest problems we have with the issues happening in society today is because more people are thinking about themselves without bothering about the implications of their actions or inactions on other people. I use this example very frequently. Sometimes you run into traffic on the road and you are wondering what has caused this. Ordinarily, you are not expecting that there should be traffic. But then you just go and find out that someone has parked a car by the roadside, maybe to buy something. And that person does not care if he or she has blocked the road, and every other person behind is inconvenienced. If people behave like that, then we will have a chaotic kind of society. So selflessness is one of the primary ingredients in sacrificing. 2, we must have the good of others at heart. That is to say, we must love people genuinely and do things not because we are expecting anything in return, but because it is the right thing to do. If we love people, we will want to see them having a good life. And if it is in our power to make it happen, we will, without even counting the cost. So we must be selfless, we must love. And thirdly, A very important ingredient too in the whole thing, the whole talk of sacrificing, especially for the common good, is to look at the outcome of the actions that we take. The things we do, the things we say, or the things we fail to do. This thing I'm about to do, how does it affect society? Will it help society to be better or not? If we are focused on the common good, knowing that what affects others affects us, then we will always make efforts to sacrifice something for the good of others. In the philosophy of existentialism, there is the whole big talk of the I-thou relationship. I am because you are, and you are because I am. Just like you said, if all of us die, then there will be nobody to talk about sacrificing. So if we consider the common good and then have it always as one of our driving forces, then it will be very easy for us to make sacrifices. This thing, if it helps the cause of this organization, of this community, fine. Even though it's going to be inconveniencing for me, I'm ready to do it. These are the things that we should look at when we talk about sacrificing.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Father Servanus. I'll still stay with you, but I also like Dr. Dikawa to also answer right after you. You know, those watching us, especially the common folks at this moment, will be wondering, hey, what are they saying? We've had to make a lot of sacrifices in terms of, you know, we've had to endure, you know, rising cost of fuel, rising cost of foodstuffs, so many things, and they are still asking us to make more sacrifices. You know, what about our leaders? So I would like for us to see, can we, you know, within the context of still, you know, Christ-like, apportion, you know, sacrifice to these different, you know, the two classes of people, the leaders and the led. What role, what kind of sacrifice are we expecting from the led and the leaders?
For the leaders, we must keep in mind that leadership is service. If we take that away from leadership, then we take everything out. Leadership is service. Jesus made it very clear that the rulers of the world lord it over the followers. But as Christians, we must not be like that. And that's why I said I came not to be served, but to serve. And at the heart of service is sacrificing. As a leader, you must be ready to put up with a lot of inconveniences and difficulties for the good of those that you lead. Unfortunately, that part is lacking so much in the crop of leaders that we have, not just in Nigeria, but across the world, but more so in Nigeria. Most of the things that we see happening in the country today that is making society go bad is because those at the helm of affairs of the nation are not ready to make any sacrifices. They think about their comfort, they think about their generations yet to come, even the 10th generation. And that's why somebody can stand up and go and steal 25 billion naira that for a lifetime you cannot spend, you cannot use. And the rest of the society is suffering for it. Common malaria tablets you can't find in primary health centers. You go to schools, they have no board, no chairs, no roof. That's because somebody has stolen what is supposed to be used for the development of such places. One of the major killers of Nigerians now is bad road. You want to travel now, you are thinking about the roads. As at the moment, the cost of flight is not affordable for an average Nigerian. So you are compelled to travel by road and you have to bear with the brunt of the bad roads. But these things are things that are supposed to have been fixed by some person. Some of those roads you see construction going on for years. A good example is the Abuja-Lokoja Expressway. That road has been going on for more than, the construction has been going on for more than 13, 14 years. Since Obasanjo was president, till today it is not done. Why so? Find out. You will discover that somebody somewhere has embezzled the funds meant for that project. So those at the helm of affairs must be ready to consider the common good. That is lacking, as I've said, but it is what is needed. Until that begins to happen, then we will not go anywhere. Those who are being led are suffering the consequences of these bad decisions, bad actions of our leaders. Yet they are the ones who are expected to continue to make more sacrifices and endure. A time will come when they will no longer be able to endure. We pray we don't get to that point, but I think we're already even there. when they will begin to take up arms and begin to revolt. We need at this point to begin to look at the common good. Nigeria is our own. And if we do not make the effort to make it good, then all of us will suffer for it. Even the leaders today that are making things bad for people, when the tides turn, their generations, if not themselves, their descendants will have to suffer for the consequences of their actions.
Okay,
So,
Reverend Father Ahmed, thank you. Let's pause here. When we come back, Dr. Dikawa will also respond to this question. We'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue. Don't forget, our conversation is on sacrificing for sustainable peace this Good Friday on the network service.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations, kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
Don't just wake up your child. Wake up the champion in them. Give them energy to help them win every day with Milo at breakfast. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child.
Milo! Do you run a breast or cervical cancer service? Are you a private or public laboratory, clinic or hospital that offer any of breast imaging, cervical cancer screening, HPV vaccination, or other breast or cervical cancer services? Is your service a primary, secondary, or tertiary center located in any part of Nigeria, no matter how remotely located it is? If yes to any of these questions, then subscribe to the OCI Foundation's Save a Breast app and become accessible and visible to millions of Nigerians. It is all for free. To subscribe, just type the Save a Breast application form on Google or go to the OCI Foundation's page on www.ocifoundation.org and search for Save a Breast application form. Complete the form and submit, and let millions of Nigerians patronize you, all for free. Become part of the OCI Foundation's quest to tackle breast and cervical cancers in Nigeria, and join us as we rise by lifting others.
Finally, the hero of Nigeria's democracy has arrived. He shall usher us into a new phase of development, peace, and prosperity. He is the father of the new Nigeria, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Welcome to another season of giving Nigerians hope yet again. We are sure of a great future for both ourselves and generations yet unborn. We look forward to your leading us as a nation into our manifest destiny. Though the challenges against us as a people are many, we know that your leadership shall set us on the right path to our greatness. A new dawn beckons on us all, and having you as our president is a precursor to this. Thank you for believing in Nigeria. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
All right, welcome back. It's Good Morning Nigeria. This is Good Friday on NTA Network Service. Earlier on, I had put a question across and said Dr. Odikawa would also give us his own perspective to that question. What should be our individual roles in making sacrifices, the leaders and the led?
Thank you very much. Nigeria is one of the best countries that any leader can govern or could govern, because the people of this nation are very, very tolerant, very patient, and I don't know, probably Nigeria has been classified as a very religious country in the world because people here seems to be very calm. What am I trying to bring out? There are so many social injustices that keeps happening in this nation. You talk about from the cradle of the society. What Karl Marx calls the cradle of the society are the less privileged ones, people who are in the rural areas. I'm not talking about the urban areas now. I'm talking about development, care, sacrifice coming from the cradle. These people have not seen any sign of sacrifice from most of our leaders. And I want also to say this very emphatically, that we must begin to know what sacrifice is. Sacrifice means, trying to be flexible as a leader most times. In constitution, we have two types of constitution. We have the rigid, we have the flexible. Most times, let's look at the flexible and make things happen. We shouldn't be rigid every time. The government pardoned some people about, I think yesterday or something. I think we should most times pardon some things. Try to allow some things to happen for the sake of peace to reign. Look at people who pay for meter, they will not see it. Go to the various institutions, no employment.
Right now, students are at home.
Students are at home, they are also on strike and all that. And people are claiming the rights. And I want the government to know that you should be in government to be remembered for good. Today, the South Africans are celebrating Desmond Tutu. Yes, a priest, you will say. They are celebrating Nelson Mandela that has gone. And people of the world celebrate great leaders that have done so many things. Why do they celebrate them? They celebrate them because of social justice that they put in place when they were in power. They also celebrate them because they took care of education. Since 1842, the missionaries brought education, Western education, to this nation by the CMS, as the Christian Missionary Society. Nigeria has not gotten it very right in that angle. Look at the ASU on strike. What are they looking for? Will the government try to look into what they are saying? Are we going to continue to claim right until the country goes into comatose? And so I want to say that the leaders must up their games in making sure we are flexible in some of the things we do most times. Pardons and some economic provisions should be made available. And also the led should also play their own role.
All right, thank you, the Reverend Dr. Odikawa. We have another guest who is joining the conversation at this time. He is Most Reverend Peter Ogumuyiwa, Archbishop of Abuja Province of the African Church. Most Reverend Ogumuyiwa, it's our delight to have you on this Good Friday. And let's have your own pitch with regard to the theme for our conversation, namely sacrificing for sustainable peace. What's your assessment and what's your prescription?
Happy celebration to us all. Jesus Christ has actually come to die for humanity, to take us out of life of hopelessness, to bring us into a life that has hope in it, a life of victory, a life of satisfaction. Now coming to the essence of today, which is Good Friday, when Jesus Christ paid the ultimate sacrifice. And to me, sacrifice is selflessness. That is when you serve and then you use everything that you have to serve humanity. That was what Jesus did during his earthly ministration. He came and he came to suffer pain. He came to be ridiculed. He came to be humiliated, so that we eventually, as human beings who is connected or who are connected with him, will have abundance of life. Now, from the discussion so far, and from our own experience, we have seen that not many leaders are sacrificial in their attitude to governance. I believe that if we have sacrificial leaders in this country and in the world today, the world will not be what it is today. Of course, there are people who have made sacrifice for the world to enjoy what we are. For instance, the inventions that we have seen, technological invention, health-wise, and all sorts of things, are some people actually made sacrifices in order that these things will come. Some people will even go to the moon. Some died in the course of trying to bring better life to humanity. Those are the sacrifices we are talking about. But when you narrow it down to what we have in our own society, especially in Nigeria, I've not seen much of sacrifice made by our leaders, both spiritual leaders and even political leaders. So I think this season that we have found ourselves now is to remind us of the fact that Jesus Christ came as a servant leader. Just yesterday in the liturgy of the church, Holy Communion, Last Supper was instituted, and then part of the event that took place before the Last Supper was the washing of the feet of his disciples. Imagine a leader whom they refer to as their master, as their Lord, now descending so low to begin to wash the feet of his disciples. That shows that a leader must be ready to serve his people. But the problem in Nigeria today is that our leaders don't even know that they are supposed to serve. When you ride on private jets, when you don't pass the road we are passing. I have traveled from Abuja to Lagos, and I know how deplorable the roads are. That is leadership. But how many of our leaders travel by road any longer? Even in a short distance, they go by air, helicopter, and private jets, and all sorts of things. We are suffering today in Nigeria because we lack sacrificial leaders. And of course, like somebody earlier said, Nigeria is a very wonderful country that has good followership. Nigerians love themselves. They want to live with themselves. They want to be happy with themselves, and they are exhibiting it. But the problem is our elite, because of their lack of sacrificial instinct or service, they try to even divide the people. So I think the message of this season is to really, if our leaders will look at it and know, it has also crept, this corruption has also crept into the church. Men, during the time of Jesus Christ, we didn't hear where he had bodyguards and all sorts of things. Even when Peter brought out a sword and was about to fight on his behalf, he said, no, you should not do that. But what do we have today? Even men of God in a private jeep and all sorts of, even in private jets and all sorts of things. We are no longer sacrificial. And the message of Easter is that we have to be sacrificial. In the book of Romans chapter 12, it says, giving yourself as a living sacrifice. How many of us does that? But I want to believe that things can still be better. Things can be changed. Only when we all see ourselves. As you are in this studio, you are working with this establishment, NTA for instance. How many sacrifices have you put into? Many people tend to, if there's no money in it, I will not do it. If I don't see all these goodies, I will not do it. And that is it. Some people have said that the National Assembly should come up with a law that will make that place unattractive or less attractive. That is what is happening all over the world. But because nobody is ready to be sacrificial, the salaries and emoluments of our political office holders are even more, to the extent that government can no longer pay lecturers in the university. Why are they on strike? It's because they couldn't meet their financial requirements for those institutions. If the money that is used to service our politicians are diverted into education, into health, sacrificially, you will see that things will get better. I think the dispensation we have found ourselves now is when this government was coming on board, they said there will be zero tolerance for corruption and all sorts of things. And we expected that things will be better today. But what do we have? No, as if nothing has changed. Just yesterday, some politicians were pardoned. Those who were thieves were pardoned. That when we should be facing security issues at this time, I think our government should be connected to the realities on ground. You see, we cannot continue this way, I believe. I'm not saying government has not done their bit, but I think we have not seen the best, and we think once we go with the principle of sacrifice, you see that the country will be better for it. All of us will enjoy. Every establishment will be happy for it. And that is the message of this season. I pray that God will open the eyes of our leaders to the issue of sacrifice, and all of us will know that this world is a very temporary place to stay. And after some time, we will leave this world. All the wealth we have amassed, everything we are looking at as good, we will leave them. I drive through Apogudu Cemetery all the time. And each time I'm driving, the Lord will just make my eyes to see the burial grounds. And I will say, oh, this is where big men are being buried. Poor people are being buried there. If all of us know that we will die one day, then we have to give our life as sacrifice to people. That is my message, my take on this.
All right. Thank you very much, Most Reverend Dr. Ogumoyiwa, for the points that you have made. You know, today is a public holiday, and we are all in the studios here for NTA, the National Public Broadcaster. There are no public holidays. It's 24/7, 365 days in a year. In a leap year, it's 366 days. Thanks once again for your comments. For us to reach out to the entire nation and beyond, you have a crew of not just the cameramen and production and directors and others, but you have engineers who are manning various stations. None is on holidays, and that's that I would say, you know, in response to part of what you were saying. But I want also to come back to the issue of sacrifice. My question is going back again to Reverend Father Silvanus. Amen. You talked about just critical elements in sacrifice or ingredients, selflessness. And I asked, look, how challenging is it? It is often said that the first law of nature is self-preservation, which means that the first law of nature recognizes selfishness. And yet, we are urging sacrifice, we are urging selflessness. How does the individual therefore sublimate that law of nature for the good of all?
It is true that the first law of nature is self-preservation. And that's why we even talk about loving others as we love ourselves. That's what Scripture says. So you must first be able to love yourself before you can love your neighbor. But in loving the self, it becomes a sin if it crosses the boundary of reasonableness. That your self-love puts others in harm's way. In relation to what we talked about now, sacrificing in leadership, self-love makes the leaders in our country, Nigeria, want to provide for themselves a good life and for their children and even their unborn children. But that self-love does not permit them to be so selfish to the point that they put the rest of society in jeopardy. I mentioned here that one person will embezzle 25 billion naira. That money sounds something small because we've been hearing plenty of it. One person stole 50 billion, one person stole 24 billion. And it seems like it is small money. But let me help you understand this. If you want to spend 25 billion naira in the next 100 years, you will have to spend a minimum of 684,000 naira every day. Every day of every year for 100 years to expend 25 billion. That's what one person will steal. That is no longer self-love. That is no longer self-preservation. That is inhumanity. That is criminal. And the worst part of it, or let's say the sad part of it, for us here in the country is that The government, I will say, is not intentional in handling such matters. That's why somebody will steal such money, goes to court and enter into plea bargain. So the person releases some of the money and goes home with the rest. It does not help the development of society. Self-love, yes, but not to the detriment of others. Your right stops where that of others begin. So if you are preserving yourself, let your preservation not put any other person in harm's way. That is one thing that we must keep in mind.
Okay, we have just less than 3 minutes to, wind down or round off our discussion. But there's something that I'm worried about, or I'm concerned about, and that is the fact that we're asking our leaders to make sacrifices in terms of what to do, their job. But this is a democracy, and our leaders will tell you that they are also guided by the Constitution. So wherein lies, or where does the sacrifice come in? I don't know. Dr. Haya, maybe you quickly take it and then whoever else.
Yes, what I know with Nigeria, and in comparison to the systems of governments that one has seen, to show that since it is the leadership hides under the Constitution has been skewed in such a way that it favors others and then leaves others. And when you look at the topic we're looking at sustainable. Anything that is sustainable must be something that works today, works tomorrow, and works in the future. So it connects with what Reverend Father Ame just said, that because you want to preserve yourself does not mean that you put another person in the harm's way. It is not sustainable to continue to have a chunk of the nation's budget being expended just for the National Assembly or the State Assembly or the councillors, while they just form about 1% or less of the total population of Nigeria. So if we have a constitution that backs such a thing, such a skewed system, that such a constitution needs to be reviewed. And I think that has been one of the major cries of people who are very conversant with the constitution, that this constitution needs to be revisited. Maybe we take off from the 1979 constitution, which gives room for more practicality than what we have today.
Yeah, Doctor, I was just wondering, it doesn't appear to me to be the case that the Constitution does not promote the concept of sacrifice for sustainability, sustainable existence. The Constitution does not prescribe the extinction of the Nigerian state. The Constitution provides for the Nigerian state as a living and organic and therefore enduring entity. And when you look at the provisions, for instance, in Chapter 2, that is the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, you find all the ingredients for sacrifice, ingredients for sustainability, tolerance, patriotism, and all the other things you're talking about. They are all embedded in the Constitution, but it is in the observance,
yes, the implementation,
that's the issue,
that we have a major challenge in terms of making our society a more livable place. So back again to the Reverend.
In 60 seconds, please.
Wow. Okay, leaders should be ready to make sacrifice. I also want to correct a notion. Let us not misconstrue or just try to jettison the meaning of humility and the meaning of sacrifice. That you are going to be sacrificial does not mean you are going to first of all be poor. And when you are poor, trekking on the road, then people know you as a very humble person or a sacrificial person. And that is just to answer a question, that you threw to one of our speakers. God will bless you, but what we are saying, make sure you are a blessing to others. Just sacrifice to others. Most people see poverty as humility. I mean, that is what we call in psychology mental, poverty. You must not be poor before you become a blessing and people see you as a humble person. That is a correction. Now, another one is the leaders we have elected must be ready to sacrifice in the area of the provision of social amenities, economic revamp for this nation. People are dying. people are suffering. In fact, let me give you an instance. In the church, most times, you see people troop in for prayers. They want to see me for prayers. But most times, you see all of them line up for school fees for their children, for, begging money and all that. And you continue to give to people. But how many times will you continue to give to people? We have portfolio beggars today all over Nigeria. You see people dress on suit, you think it's something, but they want to beg for arms and all that. So people are suffering. The government must, as quickly as possible, do something to the extent that people will see the dividend of democracy before, more especially, this government will leave power. The government is trying, but I think the good of the government, if you read this government 100%, I can say the government is doing 46%. And so we should up of our game in sacrificing to the masses. Things are getting worse every day, but I know there is still going to be an improvement.
Amen.
All right, I guess that will be a wrap for our conversation, and I'd just like to start my appreciations right from Dr. Ugochi Majesty Odikawa, who is the Senior Pastor and General Overseer, Restoration Life Assembly International, Wuye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Philip Hayab, teacher, peace advocate and conflict analyst, we appreciate your conversation. Reverend Father Silvanus Ame, Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja. Always a pleasure to have you, Reverend Father.
Thank
you. Most Reverend Dr. Peter Ogumuyiwa, Archbishop of Abuja Province, the African Parish. Thank you very much for your conversation. All right, and
well, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We'd like to thank you for being with us. The program is back on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do enjoy your holidays and Good Friday to our viewers out there. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. Again, just a reminder, you can join us in the fight against rape and rapists. That way you can be a star. From me and the production crew, have a merry and memorable Easter celebration.